Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a rant. A rant on Channel Awesome, which, as you can see by the title, I like to call Channel Abomination. Now, before I talk about this now infamous Google Doc, and the reason why it's infamous is because it really does air a lot of dirty laundry, and it's turned a lot of people off from the channel and made them change the channel, and I'm definitely one of them. I was already kind of leaning towards changing the channel anyway, as you can see by a rant I did a while back, talking about how I felt the Nostalgia Critic was starting to dip in terms of quality. So this tell-all pushed me right over the edge, and I jumped ship immediately as soon as I read it. I unsubscribed, and I don't feel bad at all, because honestly, this type of bullshit should not go unpunished, and the best way to really hit the people who were involved in this absolutely chaotic, ridiculous environment that was Channel Awesome and that guy with the glasses.com is to hit them where it hurts the most, in the wallet, in their bottom line. And you do that by unsubscribing and not giving them ad revenue for either their YouTube channel or their site. So anyway, yeah, so I was already kind of on the fence anyway, and this was just the last straw. Now, before I get into going through some selected bits and pieces of this Google Doc, I want to give you all a little bit of background, personal background with Channel Awesome and that guy with the glasses.com, which was what it was formerly known as. Now, I was never a contributor. I was not on the forums. I wasn't what you would call a diehard fan. I got into Nostalgia Critic because some friends of mine, they liked Nostalgia Critic, and it was recommended to me on YouTube, so I checked it out, and I actually didn't mind what I saw. And then I went to that guy with the glasses.com and discovered a lot of other content creators, which I still really enjoy to this day, like Obscurus Lupa, Allison, who has a really fun channel on YouTube called Movie Nights, and I would recommend you subscribe if you haven't already, if you're a fan of hers, or, just to check it out. I think you might find some fun content on there. But anyway, so I first was introduced to her content. Phelan Porteous, who I don't know if I said his last name correctly, but I'm a big fan of his. I first discovered his content through that guy with the glasses.com. Lindsay Ellis, the Nostalgia Chick, I was introduced to her content on there, and I thought, as a spin-off character of Nostalgia Critic, I thought she was pretty good, and I liked a lot of her content. And there were a few other content creators that I checked out too, like Spoonie and the Cinema Snob. Now, Brad I already knew of beforehand, but yeah, so I was introduced to, a good amount of content creators that I really enjoyed. And there were some that I didn't, that I thought were kind of lame, but hey, they all can't be winners. But anyway, yeah, I was pretty pleased with the site. I remember I checked up on it a lot. I was there when the whole demo reel shit was going on, and I was watching those videos and being like, really? Like, this is what this is? There's no more Nostalgia Critic. It's just these shitty skits that are worse than stuff I'd see on Roundhouse on Nickelodeon, or the worst seasons of All That, or Mad TV. So is it one of those like, really? This is what he's deciding to do? So I stopped checking the site after that, like, and I, except for like other videos from the other content creators that I liked. And then out of nowhere, like, a lot of these content creators, when it was rebranded the Channel Awesome, they just started disappearing. and I didn't even know what happened. So I had no idea about the whole drama with Spoonie and Lupa and all this other stuff. I knew nothing about that. I knew nothing about any of that. So and I saw like some messages that said farewell to some members, but then some other members didn't even get farewell messages. From what I read in this document, which is really shitty, but that's just one. That's one shitty thing on a giant list of shitty things that went on at Channel Awesome. But anyway, yeah, it was one of those things that was just like, wow, like I don't even know what's going on here. And then I just kind of stopped after that because I wasn't really into their interface and their website. And then there were content creators leaving, so I was like, well, there must be something going on here. I just didn't know exactly what that was. And then Blip TV died, and then they moved to YouTube, and I did keep tabs on certain content creators, including Nostalgia Critic and others. I actually was subscribed to their League of Super Critics YouTube channel at one point in time. And so, and I did follow Nostalgia Critic when he came back. I did watch his first review, The Life of Timothy Green. I actually didn't mind it because there was actually some passion there. And every now and then there'll be a video where he has some passion for the film that he's reviewing. But a lot of the time he doesn't. And it shows. Like in particular, the Mars Attacks review, which was really painful to sit through. Too many forced jokes and repetition of, oh, let me guess, there's another cameo and they're gonna die. It was just like, really, it just felt he just kind of was a one note sort of thing. And I started to see that he was really losing a lot of passion for this role and this character, and I had no idea what the truth is behind the character. And this when I first read this Google Doc, like it blew my mind when I saw a certain fact, which is like really crazy and honestly pretty disheartening. And I honestly feel bad for Doug in some ways, but other ways I don't, because he just sat there and let this shit happen and pretty much did nothing. So, yeah, I definitely have a lot to get off my chest in regards to this whole fiasco. But I just wanted to give you guys some context of my association with the channel as a fan, and not as a diehard fan, not as a, oh my god, Doug, he's Christ incarnated. No, none of that. I wasn't like Doug Walker is the Christ of movie reviewers on YouTube or on the internet. No, I wasn't one of those people. But I did enjoy his content. I felt it was starting to slip in quality. I didn't like the skits. I thought a lot of them were lame, just like they were in demo reel. And if he does come out with a video that I like nowadays, it's like an editorial or something. It's not. It's not one of those like super. It's not usually not a Nostalgia Critic video. And I also feel like he's running out of movies to review, like nostalgic content to review. It's a lot of the same kind of stuff. It's kind of like, well, what do we got here? What's going on here? The stuff that he's reviewing isn't really that nostalgic. And there's another thing that I saw on this doc that also made me go, huh? That apparently, and it's actually not in this doc, it's in a rumor document, which is full of messages from fans who were retelling their stories about Channel Awesome and what they remember happened when it comes to their association with the channel and its content creators. And I'll talk about that later. But one of the things I was like, whoa, like apparently, I'll just mention it now, might as well. Apparently, there's a rumor going around from one of the fans that when he met up with, I think it was a he, it could be a she, I could be wrong. But actually, I'll just look it up right now because I have this tab open, so I might as well. I'm trying to find it. It's a little bit down here, I think. I don't remember exact. It's kind of buried, I think, because there's like all these different other sort of stuff. And no, I can't seem to find it. So, but really what I saw, oh, here it is. Um, it's from a fan named Rob the Wonderful. And he met the Walkers a bunch of times at conventions. So he met Rob and Doug. And he was at the convention and he decided to ask, one of the conventions, and he decided to ask Doug how he picks what he reviews for the next Nostalgia Critic. And he told this guy that he doesn't pick what the next NC review was, but it's chosen for him. And if that's true, that is shocking. And that shows you how little control Doug really has over his own character. And it goes even deeper than that, because one of the thing that really made me go wow at first, because it was as I went farther through this Google Doc, like my jaw continued to further drop to the floor. It kept my jaw kept opening wider and wider and wider until it fell off and then bounced on the floor next to me by the time I was done reading the document for the first time. But the first time I saw it, that one bit was like, whoa, okay, all right, this I didn't know that. And if this is true, that's pretty, it's, I don't know, it's one of those things that's kind of hard to put into words. It's one part sad, and at the same time it's not surprising considering everything else that went on, but it's just one of those things that's like, wow, you would think Doug would have more control, and apparently he doesn't. So but yeah, I was starting to see the writing on the wall with certain things with Channel Awesome. And I unsubscribed before, and I only resubscribed to the channel because of the what's the fair use thing. And there's a little bit of information later in here that really makes me look back on that and see it as kind of shitty too, because apparently, according to one of the content creators who worked on the site, if their issue with what's going on with the site or with other things, if their issue with their content had nothing to do with what's the fair use, they didn't give a shit. So that really puts a stain on the what's the fair use thing, because apparently it was just one of those that's like, well, we don't care, we don't give a shit, you don't have a complaint about what's the fair use, don't have a complaint about fair use, we could care less. That's really shitty. And it's a bunch of bullshit, really. And there's just a lot of that's just spewed all throughout this. And I'm not saying that what these people are saying is bullshit. I'm saying that that the ways that Mike Machad and company ran this channel and treated their content creators, that is bullshit. It's total bullshit. It's an absolutely despicable way to treat people, and to treat the people who are, and in all honesty, helping make your channel and your site a reputable source for entertainment, and in some ways helping pay your bills. Actually, in a lot of ways helping pay your bills, because the ad revenue from that you put on their content goes into your pocket. So it's like, it really is a sense of biting the hand that feeds you, and not just biting the hand that feeds you, but biting it clean off, and then wiping your ass with it, and then lighting it on fire. So yeah, but I resubbed because of what's the fair use, and then recently things have just kind of go downhill in terms of content. I don't mind Tamara. I think she's a nice girl, but at first I did not mind the Tamara Has Never Seen videos, but those got old fast, because it was like, really? You haven't seen all of these movies? I find that hard to believe. And they also kind of became the same sort of thing, and I just lost interest in it. And then the Nostalgia Critics content was starting to go downhill. The editorials might be all right every now and then, but other stuff, the Nostalgia Critic reviews were usually pretty weak. And then the other content they had, like awesome comics and a few other things I didn't care about. There's this other guy who's doing like top 5 lists. The one he did on like top 5 worst Stallone films was just what I didn't even what he put titles on there that didn't make any sense, and I just could really care less about the site at that point, about Channel Awesome in general, and it was just one of those channels that was in my subscription feed, but I rarely ever watched anything on it. And then this comes out, and then it was just an immediate unsubscribe because honestly, Mike Machod, who I'm gonna call Mike Machode because he's a fucking chode. Mike Machod is one of the biggest fucking chodes on planet Earth. I hope everything just crumbles and falls apart and it just goes to hell because he deserves it. And I don't feel the people who are on the site, who are still there as content creators, or who are contributing to it, or the YouTube channel, necessarily deserve the fate that Mike deserves. But it's a fallout of something that I do feel needs to happen. And I think that anyone who's on that site or on that channel, if they have the ability to leave and do their own thing and go onto their own platform, make their own YouTube channels and do this stuff, they should do that. They should all just jump ship like it's the fucking Titanic and leave Mike Machode and his fucking cronies to sink with the ship. That's just my personal thoughts on that. A lot of the contributors who I liked already left. And they already have their own YouTube channels that I'm subscribed to and I support. So, yeah. So, it's not like I'm going to lose certain access to certain creators that who make content that I like. Phelan has his own YouTube channel, and I can just watch his content on there. Same thing goes for Allison and Brad, and so on and so forth. So, anyway, now let's get into the Google document. Now, I know I've done like 17 minutes, and I haven't even really gotten into the juicy, meaty parts. I know, some people might have already clicked off. I apologize. I'm sorry. But I don't want to make this entire video just me reading the Google document and just commenting on everything. I'm going to flip through it as fast as I can and mention certain parts that I feel strongly about commenting on, and then go to the rumor mill, so to speak, from fans who are talking about certain experiences they've had, either meeting people involved with the channel or actually working for Channel Awesome. And what's sad about this is it seems like it did start off on the right foot. There were people who were involved from the beginning who were all like, it started off fine. The first year was fun. Things were cool. And then things went to shit. And that's always so sad when you have something that starts off promising and then it just goes to hell in a handbasket. Something starts off like gold and then it turns to shit. And I feel so much for everyone who's involved with this shitstorm. And it's one of those things that's like, it's like none of these people deserved any of this. And it's a shame that such a incompetent fucking chode was in power over these people. And an incompetent chode had this platform to begin with that he doesn't even fucking deserve. Which, I'll get to why soon enough. So this document is split up into multiple different parts, where you have multiple different confessions and comments from different people who were involved with Channel Awesome. Now, the first one is Allison Pregler. Obscurus Lupa. And that's where I found out the information that Mike Machode is the one who owns the IP of the Nostalgia Critic character. And he's a majority shareholder in the company. So Doug Walker, the Nostalgia Critic, does not even own the Nostalgia Critic. He doesn't own the character. He doesn't own the intellectual property. That's a shocker. And that explains why Doug is still doing this. Because he doesn't own the IP. He needs the money to pay the bills. So he's still doing it. But it's one of those things that's like, it's not even his character. And it's shocking because they're thinking, wait a second, this was his character, wasn't it? Didn't he create this character from the beginning? And it's making me think, like, maybe he didn't. Maybe this was never his character from the beginning. It was Mike Machode's character from the beginning, and he was just working with him and so on and so forth. It's one of those things that's like, you can't even believe it. It's one of those, like, Ripley's Believe It or Not type situations. You're like, believe it or not. Believe it. So, it's total, it's just like, wow. He doesn't even own the character. And apparently, according to some other people, he isn't even the one that picks movies for the character to review. So no wonder he's losing passion, because it's a character he doesn't even own the rights to. Now, there were some people going on, not people going on, well, there were some, I don't, that's definitely not the right word. I mean, just some of this stuff, it's just so much stuff, folks, that it kind of jumbles my brain a little bit. But there were a decent amount of people who were at the top. And near the top was Mike Machode. He was the site's CEO. And there were two other CEOs when they started, Mike Ellis and some guy named Bhargav Dranamaju. Both of who are no longer with the site. Then there's some guy named Greg, who is Mike Machode's brother, who handles the scheduling of producers' videos, and apparently also carries the chode gene because he acts like a total chode in conversations with producers, with content creators. So, apparently, Mike Ellis had the chode rub off on him because he was acting like a total chode and a total douchebag, and just being a total asshole to people. And that's incredibly unfortunate to hear. It's just one of those things, like, when you see this shit happen in a workplace, it's just so aggravating. It's like, these are the people who are helping you make a living, and you're treating them like this. It's just like, for fuck's sake. So I'm just gonna go through Allison's bit here. She says, frequently, if somebody spoke up, it was ignored. If a woman spoke up, they were labeled troublemakers. Machode would frequently try to bully them. Women understandably felt uncomfortable talking to him because he's a giant fucking chode. Apparently, Mike Ellis was sexually harassing certain people, which is all kinds of fucking wrong. And they communicated to each other via Skype with a group chat. They did not communicate at all through email. Machode would disappear for long periods of time. Nobody wanted to talk to anybody. So there were some really bad communication issues. Then you had some things going on with Doug, where Doug is not considered anything but talent, but he's a part of business calls, and he's occasionally a part of company decisions, and he's more involved with everything than he told the other producers. So, and I'm not surprised about that, because he is the face of the company. And the company owns the character that his face is slapped on. So, communication was the worst. They would never tell anybody anything. The Blistered Thumbs producers who were working on this spin-off site called Blistered Thumbs, they were never told that the site was shutting down. They found out they only found out that it was shutting down when they saw the announcement on the front page. And several of the producers who worked there were let go without even being let know. Not even. I'm just so worked up about this, I can't even speak. They were let go without even being informed of their dismissal. Like, there wasn't even like a, hey, it's not working out. We wish you the best of luck. Nothing. They were just cut off. That's it. It was just like castrated from the site. Blister's Thumbs is gone, and you're gone. In essence, it was just like, fuck you, we don't give a shit. You mean nothing to us. Which is really fucking terrible. And there were some issues with things going on, even in the early days of the site. Allison was saying that she had to fight to get slots for the day on the site, especially during the holidays, because Doug would hog all the slots with his Disney-cember vlogs. Because it's December, so we need every single Nostalgia Critic Disney-cember video on there. They consider conventions a waste of time, but they said they had this belief that they should do all their advertising locally. And every decision apparently felt self-motivated and uncaring towards the other people, the other producers. It was the Doug show. It was all about Doug. That's all, the only thing that mattered. Then you have the fiasco, the just absolute travesty that was the Pop Quiz Hotshot Indiegogo thing, where they crowdfunded $90,000 for this game show that doesn't look like it cost $900, let alone $90K, and 40-something episodes were promised. Only 12 were made, so they could, so Channel Awesome could get around the legal issues with Indiegogo, and they could maybe write it off as a tax write-off or something like that, as a failed project. Channel Awesome filmed a bunch of different versions of the pilot. Some of them didn't work. They had to refilm them because the studio is apparently so fucking cheap it is not sound dampened. You would think, oh, they have a studio. They'd be able to afford ways to make the sound less obtrusive to their shooting. Apparently not. They tried to rig the question so a contestant would win, but they fucked up and switched the cards so it actually went in Doug's favor. So the winners just split a $100 gift card with Doug. So all they got was $50 out of the whole ordeal. They had to be told to have prizes by their HR person, who's named Holly, who I believe is also in this document. The game show was Machode's idea, and nobody else wanted to do it. Of course. It's fucking Chode. The Indiegogo rewards were 6+ months late, which is unacceptable, considering that people paid you $90,000 fucking dollars for this game show. In March 2015, like a year and a half since the show was promised, after Indiegogo threatens to investigate, Machode forces Doug and Rob to release the first episode of the show, and apparently they're both embarrassed about it. I can see why, because it sucked. Even Brad Jones was like, this is fucking terrible. I'd rather be watching porn right now than hosting this god-awful show. And then Obscurus Lupa Allison talks about the anniversary films, which I was never a fan of, but apparently it wasn't very much fun on the set of these. They had to be told to have water on the set and catering. It was one of those like, oh, they didn't know that if you have a production this large, you should have water and food available for the crew. This is just sheer incompetence. Like, the incompetence is on display here rivals that of Action International Pictures, who I like to call an incompetent production. I'm pretty sure they had catering available on the set of their films. And apparently, nobody was paid for their time for these anniversary films. They didn't make any revenue from the DVDs either. They were paid an exposure and a free trip with their friends. And there were other things that happened too with some of the other creators who are in this document where they would have their content up and they would get nothing for it. They get no portion of the blip revenue, no portion of the ad revenue, nothing. And that would go on for like months. They would just be sharing their content on this site for exposure only and nothing else in return. I mean, that is totally a raw deal. Michaud rubbed everybody, for the most part, who worked for Channel Awesome or that guy with the glasses the wrong way. There also was apparently some contracts that went on where they're all like, oh, they signed contracts for the anniversary films, which covered things such as injury liability, which came in handy because there were some people who worked on these films who got hurt, and because they signed a contract, they really couldn't sue Channel Awesome and Michaud for not thinking things through and just using people. So Doug apparently was a really crazy director. Like, he was so full of himself that he thought that everybody should do things like him, so deliver the lines like I deliver them. But he didn't know what he was doing, because apparently when they were filming in the park for Suburban Nights, the second I think the first fan film that they did, or I think it might have been the second one, because I know they did Kickassia, Doug would start giving directions to people passing by as if they were part of the film's production. This is how clueless and how far up his own ass Doug is. He's trying to give stage directions to people who aren't even members of the cast. You can't make this shit up, folks. Like, this is unreal. And apparently they only had one camera to shoot these films, and it wasn't until they had a meeting, Allison and a few other people had a meeting where they were like, we should use more than one camera. Just the incompetence is just crazy. And actually, the woman, there was a woman who got hurt doing stunts for a Suburban Nights. Her name was Liz, and she was a guest of Louis Linkara, and she was asked to play a cloak, which is a character in the film, and she never signed a contract, but she bashed her knee in while filming a stunt. But Michaud and company got her into signing a contract that says that they aren't liable. What a bunch of fucking shitheads. And apparently 4 people in total were injured because there were no safety precautions. There was also a woman named Lisa who was taped to a wall in a cross position, and she was left there for so long that she passed out. There were other instances where they were asked to be up in an attic somewhere, and there was like no air conditioning and no nothing, and they didn't even know what was going on, and the director was just shooting shit that didn't even end up being used in the movie, and they were up in this hot fucking attic with no water and no anything for an uncomfortable amount of time. And apparently there were fans who never even got a DVD of a movie that they paid for into Boldly Flee. Yeah, To Boldly Flee, it really does fit Channel Awesome right now. Boldly flee away from this shit. Just get away. Be bold and flee. Change the channel. Get the fuck out of here. Change the channel. Break the TV. Just disassociate yourself from this shit as soon as possible, because It's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. Even as a fan of this content, it's like, really? It's not worth it. It's not worth it, especially when you're supporting this fucking heinous shit. This heinous behavior from Machode and company. So, scripts weren't given out until really late. They only had a week to film a 4-hour movie. No one in the cast was informed that Doug was killing off the Nostalgia Critic character, and apparently Doug was insinuating that because he was killing off the Nostalgia Critic, that these other content producers should also kill off their characters. I mean, what an arrogant ass. I mean, for somebody to just be like, yeah, you know, I'm retiring the character, you should retire your characters. No! That's not how this works. Like, he's so fucking full of himself. He's like, I'm retiring the character, so you should retire it too. There's some other weird stuff. There was a scene that wasn't shot that was implying that a character Linkara's playing called Mechakara was going to rape a character off screen, which is pretty fucking disturbing. Lindsay Ellis and Allison had a fight scene in To Boldly Flee, which they did not want to do and are uncomfortable with, but Doug didn't know what to do with it, so he just forced them to do the scene. And they were always behind the schedule, and there was this other bullshit. Whenever anything happened, like bad continuity in the film, Rob Walker would just say, "Oh well, plot hole." I swear, like when I read that, I had the image of Rob Walker playing that clueless movie exec that he seems to play in a lot of these videos, and you know, a lot of Nostalgia Critic videos. And I'm like, he's not even acting. He's not even acting in those videos. He is that clueless movie exec who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. I mean, it's like he's satirizing these characters, this clueless movie exec, like he's bigger and all holier than thou and knows better than them, and he's like, plot holes? Oh well. Catering and water for people? Oh well. A good public relations with the producers on the site? Oh well. It's just you can't believe this shit. It's like, it really is. It's unbelievable. You cannot. The incompetence continues because apparently there was a scene with Brad Jones, and the directors were breaking the 180 rule, which is an incredibly simple rule that every filmmaker should know about, amateur or professional. And no, there was just this big argument, and then nothing ever happened. There was a cameraman who's credited as the DP named Ed who pointed this out. Everyone got in an argument with him, and then he never worked with them again, which is a good choice because you don't need to be working with chodes. Don't need to be associating with chodes. They're nothing but bad news and nothing but a bad time. So, and also there was this other bullshit where the camera crew had to go home early for personal reasons. They told Doug early in the day that would be the case. Doug forgot to tell anyone, so then at the end of the day, they didn't have enough cars to take everyone back to their hotel or to dinner that night. So Phelan, Julian, and Allison got left behind on the set for To Boldly Flee while everyone else went to Applebee's. I mean, that is... How are you this incompetent? It is absolutely unbelievable. They also asked Phelan to do some green screen bit for the film that never even got shot, and they were talking shit to Phelan behind his back about his effects, which he did for free, and did a lot of heavy CGI effects for the film for free, and they were talking shit about his effects behind his back, and all kinds of shit. So she also clears the air about the Spoonie incident and how things weren't as bad as they appeared because once again, Channel Awesome is not really telling the whole story. And it got so bad in 2013 where when there were a bunch of producers who were all like, this shit is fucked up, we don't like the way you're treating us. And that didn't seem to really go anywhere at all. The site was revamped to Channel Awesome, but apparently they've never updated their site in 10 years. It's just an icky sports Joomla template. And you can do a Google search, and you can apparently certain producers can still access their info and get in because they never even bothered to change any of that. And they it just keeps going on and on. I mean, this is gonna be a long video because there's just so much to get through. But wow, I mean, I've read this before, but reading it again, it's still unbelievable to me. How you can have a website that was so successful at one point in time, that was a pop culture icon in a lot of ways for internet YouTubers, for internet movie reviewers and content creators, not just movie reviewers, but content reviewers, period. And it's just, haven't updated their site in 10 years. They try to update the site, and they revamp it to Channel Awesome, but only because the content creators they made a request to make things more about the community and less about Doug. So they honored their request there. Excuse me. Just thinking about a lot of this shit just gives me an indigestion. Makes me want to throw up. But they still weren't willing to listen to them on other things. It was like, if it dealt with the site, okay, fine, because the site is in a large part their livelihood, and it's one of the things that helps their bottom line. So for them to update that for the times, that's important. But they still didn't update it that much. It still hasn't been updated in 10 years. Mike Machode is apparently looking for a site designer, and the first people he asks are the ones who designed the White House webpage, because Mike Machode thinks he's such hot shit that he can get the people who did the page for the White House to redesign his website, which just shows you how delusional this fucking chode is. And they give him a quote of $50,000, and he just goes, ugh, can't do that. It's all out of my price range. Understandably so. You don't have the money or the collateral to afford to pay them to redesign your site. So he goes with a $100 template like a fucking cheapskate. And they brought on a massive amount of people when they set up the new site, but they flooded the front page with all these different people that people weren't familiar with. And then because of that, all of the views for the content producers who were there before all these people came in completely tanked. And then this was around when Blip went away. So yeah, that really was really poor timing for that. And there was something that went on in Chicago when Allison is barely making ends meet. She goes to Chicago to film a crossover on Talking Cat review with Doug, and apparently she's working on this, and Rob Walker, like a total fucking chode and a dickhead and an annoying gnat, keeps interrupting things to read off IMDb trivia for their things you didn't know about Ghostbusters video, which was pretty lame, because when I saw that, I'm like, I know about all of this. And big reason why is because I read it off of IMDb. So, and that's apparently exactly what Rob did. Didn't even do his own research. Didn't even try to look outside of IMDb. Just copy and pasted IMDb trivia into that video. No one is trying to get Rob to shut the fuck up and stop talking about Ghostbusters trivia while they're trying to film a crossover. Doug has to continually tell Rob and company to shut up and be quiet, but they act like nobody is they act like it's not even happening, like no one is there, like Doug is not there telling them to be quiet. And apparently it seems like this is kind of a running thing where Rob Walker is like a megalomaniacal douche, and Doug has to just deal with his brother. And there are times where even with interactions with fans, there was one fan who asked. This is a rumor, but I would not be surprised. I'm pretty much thinking this is 99% true, considering what I've read about Doug. Not necessarily Doug, but in some ways Doug, because he's enabling this shit. He's enabling this behavior from his brother. He's doing nothing to really stop it. Or his brother just doesn't fucking listen to Doug. He either has no respect for Doug, or he doesn't give a shit. So there was an instance where this fan was talking about he's really looking forward to meeting Rob, and he's met him before, and it seemed like it went well, and he asked Rob to sign one of his DVDs, and Rob basically just told him to fuck off. He just said, fuck off, fuck you, I'm not doing this. And Doug was like, hey, what are you doing, man? Why are you doing that? And Rob said to Doug, fuck you. It was like, if this is true, which I'm pretty sure it is, I'm leaning towards it being true because Rob seems like an asshole, according to a lot of people who knew him personally in this document. It's just one of those like, dude, who the fuck are you, Rob Walker? Like, do you really think that you are actually Santa Christ? That you can just act like this and with no repercussions, and you could just act like you're hot shit and you're untouchable? It's just, I think he's that delusional. I think he thinks he literally is Santa Christ. You're not, Rob. You're not Santa Christ. You're just a normal fucking guy who needs to take a chill pill and stop being a fucking dick. Stop being a knob, Rob. So, yeah, there's this uncomfortable bunch of stuff. There was some podcast Allison did that didn't go that well, which is understandable. Then Allison talks about how she got fired because apparently she was inspired to set up a Patreon because she's struggling to make ends meet, and Linkara had put one up, and she decides to do that, and Machode gets pissed off and gets mad at her. She replies back, what are you doing? Why are you being such a fucking derp face about this? And she goes in and tells him, what about the Indiegogo campaign? You were promoting that. And Rob chimes in. It was like, that was executive authority. And then she also pointed out that Mike Jevons' Nerd Quest campaign was promoted. And Mike also left Channel Awesome. Film Brain left Channel Awesome. And I think it was a lot of that happened directly after this tell-all came out. And good for them. Leave. Mike has his own YouTube channel that has almost 100,000 subscribers. He doesn't need Channel Awesome. So it just continued to devolve to the point where Mike keeps trying to message Allison to try to talk to her. There's some parting of ways message about her and Phelis, who leaves around the same time as Allison did, and they actually misspelled Phelan's name in there, and it was just one of this whole just kind of just ridiculous shit. Mike is continuing trying to message her about things. She's like, I don't want to talk to him. She's away from the computer filming something, and after about 15 minutes, Mike tells her in a message that because she's ignoring him, they're taking her off the site. And there's another thing too. There was a message that Rob put on, and this is a message here where Rob is talking about how to other producers that we won't link to, he says that adding Patreon along with the mid-rolls, which is advertising in between the videos, is a slap in the face to the fans. Which honestly, the biggest slap in the face in the fans is the fucking behavior from Rob Walker and Mike Machode from the knob and the chode running Channel Awesome, which really is Channel Abomination, because it's an abomination of mankind. It should be fucking burned to the ground with a flamethrower, and we can get rid of these two fucking tyrants who have no business running a business, except for running it into the ground. Which they shouldn't be running anything into the ground because they're incompetent. They should not be doing this. They're fucking over other people who aren't doing anything to deserve this fucking treatment. It's there's nothing that really gets my hackles up more than people who are getting shit on unfairly and are just being used. These motherfuckers used people and abused them for financial gain. There's an extra special hot place in hell for these people. For these kind of fucking people who use and abuse people. So, anyway, yeah, she got let go because of some dispute with Patreon. She wanted to help out her bottom line, which is understandable, and they basically canned her. Then you have Mars Girl, who I wasn't really that familiar with. She was added to the site because she was a runner-up for the Nostalgia Chick contest. And she was one of the earliest contributors to the site. And she never got a dime or a single cent. She didn't get anything from her earlier videos in terms of payment. They mislabeled some of her videos, which led to people leaving comments, chewing her out. But that's only because of the fact that they didn't even fucking label her videos correctly. She ended up being a moderator for a certain amount of time, but and she did that out of honestly, but it looks like, I don't know, she wasn't a moderator. She just was another content creator or producer on the site who was a moderator as well as a producer. And apparently Machode was uncomfortable with the fact that Mars Girl liked to communicate with Screw Attack, and that she was going to Screw Attack gaming conventions, and she had a lot of really bad and hard conversations with Mike Machode because he's a fucking chode and he has no communication skills, because chodes don't know how to talk to people without being total chodes about it. She was asked to make costumes for the anniversary films, including one that she was asked to make from her own money last minute, and then they had the gall to ask her to give the costume to them, and she was like, no, I'm keeping the costume, because they're all like, we'll pay you back for the money you spent only if you let us have the costume. And I'm trying to see, there's a few other things here. She was apparently forgotten when they were filming one of the filming To Boldly Flee. Like, they didn't even mention her by name. She meant that much to them, which wasn't that much apparently. It was just, they didn't care. They didn't even mention her by name on the set of that film. She had been with Channel Awesome pretty much since the beginning. And she was forgotten about, wasn't treated properly. She removed herself from a group chat. And then, because she was talking about how other people were being affected by the chode and the knob, and she removed herself from the conversation, and then she was removed from the site. somebody who had been a content creator on that site for 9 years. And it doesn't stop there, because they were not afraid of firing people who had been on there for just about as long and had not really missed any deadlines, had not done anything. Like the first time they missed a deadline, they were already on a list. They already got a strike because they're all being like this whole, oh, we don't want to be unfair to certain people. We want to be right on the money. You know, we don't want to come across as preferring certain producers over other ones. So everybody gets these restrictions put on them if they miss a deadline. But that's not the case, because there are instances where there were people who had not posted a video and had not met a deadline for months, who were still on the site and did not have anything done to them whatsoever. Now, this one is from an HR rep for the company for a short amount of time named Holly. And she's talking about how she was HR from the company. They barely listened to her 5% of the time at most, which is ridiculous for an HR person who works for the company. Mike Machode is not the sole owner of Channel Awesome, but he does own the Nostalgia Critic IP. He's the majority shareholder. Doug and Rob did not know him until Mike Ellis and Bargo approached them to make the site, and apparently Doug and Rob liked having someone else in charge. Apparently they want to be lazy bastards and don't want to fucking do the hard work to make a site based on a character that they helped create blossom and become big. Mike Ellis was the one who originally built the site. And apparently even Holly had no idea what Machode did. I've heard some things about that Machode would just be sitting there fucking playing video games most of the time and would really not do anything productive. She says that they never understood social media at all, which is that is a pretty jaw-dropping fact, considering that they were a social media platform for many years and one of the most popular ones for their type of content. She was never informed of anything that went on, despite being a part of management. Rules were not enforced equally for everyone. The site lost a bunch of stuff in 2010 or 2011 because it only existed on a single hard drive. More astonishing incompetence. Apparently, Mike Ellis was so upset that Holly would not pursue a relationship with him, and this is while he was married, that she and him almost got in a fist fight. And when Mike Ellis got fired, Channel Awesome put her in a safe house for a few days because they were concerned that he would come after her. And I like her description of this. She's like, nothing was more strange than being escorted to my house with a group of guys with baseball bats and a sword so I could pack. Pretty sure I even grabbed a golf club to be able to go up to my bedroom. We all got pepper spray after that. And she then mentions that Doug tested the pepper spray earlier by spraying it into the kitchen sink. And then she says it didn't go well. Yeah, no shit, it didn't go well. Doug, you're a fucking dumbass. Who fucking sprays pepper spray into a kitchen sink? He's the same guy who's all like, hey, you joggers, go to this certain direction. I want you to be over there. Dude, what are you talking about? I don't even know you. We're just going for a run. Oh, yeah, I thought you were part of my movie. It's like, no, I'm not a part of your movie, dude. I'm just getting my exercise. So, I mean, Doug comes across as this really intelligent guy in these videos and stuff like that, and it seems like he's nowhere near as smart as he comes across. He really isn't. He's spraying fucking pepper spray in a sink, and then there's the whole absurdity of fucking guys with baseball bats and a guy with a samurai sword. Oh, we'll protect you. I mean, this is the kind of shit you'd see in a fucking movie, not in reality. And how she was fired was really fucking terrible. Like, this was awful. This was heinous. She was already tasked with doing way too much work. She was the only person to work every day of the year. She worked their weekends, holidays, vacations, days that she had surgery, everything. And the day before she was let go from the company, she had surgery. She came home and did a site update. And then she was asked to drive to the studio against the doctor's orders to be told that she was no longer employed. She was not provided with any reason why she was fired, because they didn't. There was no need for that, because the state of Illinois has some at-will thing, which makes it so they can fire anybody for any reason, which is a whole nother pile of fucking garbage, if you ask me. That's even more bullshit. And they let her have the surgery, but then, like, just pretty soon afterwards, they fired her. They had her sign another contract after she was fired, because if she didn't sign, she wouldn't receive severance pay. And this contract barred her from working in the industry for 3 years. The Chode and the Knob made her sign a contract that put her out of work for 3 years. She was scared of pursuing anything legal against them because she was chronically ill, she was unemployed, and they had recently accumulated $90,000 after their Indiegogo campaign. But she's recovered since then, and she's worked really hard to make things better. She's been published in the Mary Sue, and she was a guest on BBC NewsHour. So I'm really glad that Holly managed to get out of this shitstorm okay and upright and healthy and happy. But that doesn't change the fact that what she dealt with was fucking unacceptable. 100%. Then Linkara talks about what happened. It seems like he was asked to maybe do this spin-off thing called Inked Reality, but it never really happened, never really went anywhere. There was mismanagement going on with the moderators. He seems to be, the stuff he's talking about, seems like his relationships were all right. Seems like it. He was a co-moderator of the forums, because he mentioned how there was Film Brain was the one that was doing the forums, and it was too much of a heavy load for him, and things were getting out of control, and they then appointed him to be the moderator, and that was kind of lame. And there were a few other things that went on with the company that he disagreed with. He was kind of interested in maybe running Inked Reality, but then ultimately decided against it because it was taking too long to get off the ground. And then at the same time, it's one of those things that really wasn't going to happen anyway because of the failure, well, not necessarily the failure of Blister Thumbs, the cancellation, the castration of Blister Thumbs from the site. I do like how he explains kind of what happened. I like this quote from Linkara. He says, "In the wake of what had happened, I knew there was a general feeling that the site was no longer in its glory days." This is after what happened with Spoonie and when Allison and Phelan and a few other people left or got fired. I knew that there was a general feeling that the site was no longer in its glory days, and that the more optimistic sense of togetherness the site had engendered was going away. So, despite his outrage for what happened, he tried to fix things for new producers who had just signed on to the site. He mentioned certain things that they could do to fix the site. They only did a few things. And he asked them, Channel Awesome and their studio, if he could use the studio for his movie. They were basically telling him no. And so a lot of his stuff he's saying is, I think it's interesting, but it seems to be rather tame. I mean, he doesn't really go hard on them. He really doesn't. He just recently left the site. So maybe he will talk more about it and spill some more details in the future. But it seemed like things could have been better, but he didn't get the worst of it. There was Sway talks about a few things. He talks about the craft services thing. When there was a lack of craft services on To Boldly Flee. Then you had Jacob Chapman, Jesu Otaku. Machode apparently was going to have him fired for criticizing the site. He told him that no, I would quit on my own terms and my own time, or else I would go public with the chat logs he had of their abuse to him. They were 100% going to fire him for basically saying that the site had issues in public at all, but they crumpled like wet cardboard. When I told them it wasn't going to happen without him publicly destroying their reputations, so probably still has those chat logs. Who knows? He might release those soon. Or he might not. These are all creators I'm not super familiar with, by the way. Benzai, he was told that his vid archive would not transfer to Channel Awesome. Apparently, the bridge between him and Machode was burned because he told him that he shouldn't be selling his girlfriend's artwork, which is understandable. But he's made a fortune elsewhere, so good for him. He cut bait, cut ties, and ended up making a better and more worthwhile and less chaotic life for himself. John Burkhart, who is talking about Chaos D1, and he did a few things. You know, he did some content for the site. Yeah, this is Chaos D1 talking actually, and he was discussing reinstatement with Greg because he was removed from access to the schedule of the site because he was 1 day late with a video due to medical emergencies with his wife. And despite having providing 4 videos to the site in the previous month and never having missed a single regularly scheduled post for over 5 years, he was given a strike and was basically fucked over. I mean, this is a guy he'd been a active contributor, he'd been consistent, and they still fucked him over. Equal opportunity ass fuckers over here in the knob and the chode. So they had a sudden 1 video per month policy implemented on them, which was then later changed to a 2 video month per policy. It's apparently happened pretty recently. That happened in roughly late 2016 or early 2017. Apparently enforcement of this rule seems random and arbitrary. Like what other people were saying, including Holly, saying that it was just, it happened. It happens when it happens. And then when it happens, they give you the whole, when you ask about it, they're all like, well, everybody is held to the same rules. We want to be fair. Bullshit. Bullshit my dick. So he went on and talked about reinstatement of Greg. Greg was being a dick about it. And he was holding him to these tweets that he wrote about what was going on. And then they pretty much fired him. Let him go because of that. which is really lame. And then you have Dr. Gonzo, who's a guy who did something called Nerd to the Third Power. And I really feel, this one really hit me right here in my heart because, excuse me, once again, just thinking about the stuff that this guy had to deal with, it makes me sick. It really does. And not just this guy, everyone had to deal with, who was mistreated and treated like garbage, like gutter trash by the knob and the chode at Channel Abomination. So he was he started off, it seemed like he was there fairly early, and he was doing a podcast and called Nerd to the Third Power, and he ended up sharing it on the site. I think he was a part of Blistered Thumbs, and he was essentially a whipping boy for the chode, which is really fucking heinous. It's atrocious. Nobody should be anybody's whipping boy. So he produced Nerd to the Third Power and kept doing it despite his inklings that some stuff might not be alright. And he had access to his viewership numbers on counters on the website at first, but then they were removed. He understandably asked Machode for numbers, like what's going on with the numbers, to gauge the performance of his show, and he was continually ignored until one time he got a reply that basically said, "Stop asking for your numbers. They suck anyway because nobody comes here to listen to you." Which I'm like, wow. If I need any more proof that Machode is a chode, is a giant raging fucking chode, here you go. Apparently he kept doing that. The only contact that Dr. Gonzo got from Machode and Company, from Channel Awesome, Channel Abomination Management, was Chode would randomly message him and tell him to something to the effect of, "Your numbers are low. Get them up or you'll be booted from the site." Yet he would not tell him what his numbers were or what total he needed to get, which is extremely unhelpful and a total fucking thing for a chode to do. Chodes are gonna chode. They ain't gonna help you with shit. And I'm like, why did you even have this poor guy in the site? Why did you even string him along? Why did you even have him here? Is it just some sick, twisted, sadistic shit where you had him here so you could torture him like the fucking Marquis de Sade? It's one of those things that's like, why? So, and if you have him here and you think he has some content that could work, then why don't you help him make it better? Like, give him, the numbers are low. Okay, what are the numbers? And give him some advice on how he can fix it. But no, never happened. So, and if that isn't bad enough, his show and all the other podcasts that he did, because he even went to the trouble of making video versions of the podcast. So, and he went through all of that and put in a lot of effort, and didn't matter because Chode and Company, don't give a shit. So his show and all the other podcasts were buried at the bottom of the site, and where nobody could find them unless they scrolled all the way to the bottom of the page. He would schedule his shows for months in advance, and he would do all this other stuff, and he never really was able to get on the schedule because he was the one that was continually pushed onto the back burner. And numerous occasions the show would be published, but it would not be placed on the front page. He would talk to Machode about this. He would tell him, "Why do you care? Nobody listens to you anyway. Your numbers suck. It doesn't matter if you go on the front page. And that's if he even responded at all. See what I'm saying? He's Mike Machode. He would randomly message Dr. Gonzo for feedback on the show. He would give him feedback on the show, and it was always negative and abusive. He says, your background music sucks. You need to lose the British girl. She's boring. Why do you have so many movie reviews? We got Doug for that. And after several years of not having any problem with how Dr. Gonzo handled the MP3 downloads, he was randomly told that all the MP3 files had to be less than 20 megabytes in size. And this is ridiculous because it was a show at the time that recorded audio from 6 people plus background music that ran for 2 hours. So Dr. Gonzo had to purchase a web hosting site and host the files himself and send this fucking chode a download link, which half of the time he wouldn't even post. So, understandably, this continuous mistreatment from management sent him into a deep and very nearly suicidal depression, which I gotta say, that is a fucking bummer, man. That is fucking bogus. I hope the chode gets what's coming to him. This motherfucker deserves some karma just hitting him right across his fucking face. So yeah, it's just like, it's so distressful. It's like, how could you treat somebody else like this? And this is really shitty. Like, I mean, honestly, it's just more shit on top of more shit. But this might as well be the diarrhea dump on top of the giant pile of shit. Because apparently Dr. Gonzo had this idea to do a tribute to Justin Jew Warrior Carmichael, who committed suicide. He died by self-inflicted gunshot. And Dr. Gonzo was saying, let's do a tribute to Justin, and let's do a online wake where everybody could bring their footage in, and they can or they can have everybody together in one place, and they can get on camera, and they can say a few words about Justin. And he didn't see that anybody else was talking about the idea, so we approached the chode, Mike Machode, with the idea, and he got back to him immediately, and which is way out of character. It's understandably surprising for Dr. Gonzo. And Dr. Gonzo then presented him with the idea, and he said, well, you're not going to have to worry about that, Gonzo. And at first, Dr. Gonzo's like, okay, he's already got something planned, but then he follows up with, nobody knows who you are. They don't care about anything you're going to put together. We're going to have Doug or Lewis or someone put something together. Someone people actually come here to see. Mike Machode is a despicable, heinous, irreprehensible, ignorant pile of fucking scum. And a giant chode. Or he's a chode that's made out of fucking scum. He's a scum chode. How low can you fucking get? So understandably, Dr. Gonzo was stupefied. He couldn't believe that he saw that. He's just like, how can you... especially that kind of response to a plan to let people mourn a loss. And Dr. Gonzo says this quite well. He says, I realize that Mike Machode never cared about anyone beyond what use he could get out of them. Oh, he would put together a Justin Carmichael tribute, but it wouldn't be about the loss. It would be about letting people grieve. To him, it was just another piece of content. Something he could make money off, if only indirectly. Yeah. And he said it's all about promoting the brand. It was never about the loss. It was about promoting the brand. And that was the moment where Dr. Gonzo realized that Machode was not and never was a man to be trusted. Yeah, because he's a giant fucking chode. A giant scum chode. So he eventually left Channel Awesome after a transition from that guy with the glasses, and then he didn't see his content up, and he went in to log in and try to check what was going on. His email was deleted, his messages, everything was just gone. Just disintegrated. And no message of, we wish Dr. Gonzo best of luck on their website. No warning, no notice, no nothing. Fucked him over. And apparently, there's a rumor out there, which could be true, that other producers were pretty much asked to stay away from this guy. They were asked to blackball him by Machode. And there were people that he was friends with early on who he thought would be there for him, and they weren't. And now they're trying to be there for him, but he's understandably conflicted of like, why weren't you there for me when I was being whipped by this fucking scum chode, Mike Machode? And yeah, and he says, I don't remember the community because frankly I wasn't a part of it. But let me be clear, the soulless, money-grubbing piece of dog shit had us all fooled. If you can take one lesson from my story, let it be this. Channel Awesome is a meat grinder, and its owners and managers are fat swine feeding off the blood, sweat, and tears of good people. Them and their like care nothing for you, your well-being, or your ambitions, and they will tear you open and suckle on your innards if you give them the chance. Yeah, I mean, I know this is long, but like, you can't talk about this. It's like 60-something pages. You can't talk about 60-something pages, in my opinion, in depth, and give your like really concentrated thoughts on it in anything else other than as long as it needs to be. So then you have Leon Thomas, who talks about, who is known as Renegade Cut. He worked on Blistered Thumbs. He did a web series. And apparently there's a lack of communication that was going on. And things ended because, once again, Mike Machode is being a fucking chode. Super chode of the fucking universe. Then there's this guy named Sean Foz, named Epic Fail, and he was at Channel Awesome the first year or so, and I guess Mike Ellis was messaging him a bunch of stuff, and this is really disturbing, and Mike Ellis kept messaging him on Skype, and then it was just a bunch of weird shit. But and actually at first it was just a bunch of bullshit. Just BSing about random things. And then people were saying that, oh, it's because he was intoxicated. But he was typing very coherently at the time. And then what started as a simple enough conversation became very uncomfortable. I heard from, this is Sean quoting what what Mike Ellis said. I heard from a little birdie that you were gay. Oh, I heard you were at least bi. Oh, so you're just curious about guys then. And apparently the conversation turned very one-sided and even more uncomfortable as Mike Ellis would keep on telling Epic Fail, Sean Foz. So he kept telling Sean that all the things that he wanted to do to him, the things that he wanted him to do to him, and just to give him a shot. I can't even mention this shit without just feeling just grody and just like fucking disgusted, like at every pore of my body. This went on for 2 hours. For these 2 hours, he typed not one word to him, but he had this entire conversation with himself, and multiple times, and the person who's having a conversation with himself is Mike Ellis, and multiple times he tried the whole, I didn't mean to scare you off tactic. And he showed this conversation to this guy named Rollo T because he was freaked out about it, and then he showed it to Machode. And then he messaged Machode about it, and he says, look what this guy's doing. I'm super freaked out. And keep in mind, apparently this is before the anniversary brawl that happened. And the only thing he ever heard from Machode was, damn it, I told him he couldn't be doing this shit. I'll take care of it. And then it was never spoken of again. And he never heard from Ellis again either. Now, apparently, Sean has a hatred for Seinfeld. And he jokes about it because there are things that Ellis said to him during this 2-hour disturbing, creepy-ass conversation that stuck in his head because of how pathetic and weird it was. Apparently, he kept calling Sean his sexual cupcake. After those hours of talking to himself, he finally gave up talking to him, but he did make one last-ditch effort to hit on him. And he says it was the worst pickup line he'd ever been given. And it was, hey, Sean, hey, Cupcake, do you like Seinfeld? And he's like, no, I do not. I mean, I still like Seinfeld, but I'm not going to be thinking of Seinfeld the same way after reading this. I mean, some fucking creeper has Seinfeld now associated with his creepy-ass fucking behavior. How did they let that guy fucking run this? How did they let this guy be a part CEO or in charge of any part of his company for so long? It's mind-blowing. Now, then you have some girl named Beth. She says that her business and friendships are two different things. The Walkers and other CA crew have been and continue to be good friends of hers. She worked for the Awesome Comics thing, and she pretty much was screwed because she was said that she was going to get paid a certain amount, and she didn't get paid that amount at all, and eventually she just left and went and worked for IO9 and made a lot better money. And she's saying, don't stay in a situation. I like her advice here. She says, I shared a story not to shame but to educate. In a gig economy, we're tempted, coerced, and sometimes even forced to lower our value in order to get by. You're worth more than that. And I think that's a great message that a lot of people should take to heart. You're worth more than the lowest of the low. There's this younger man named Topher Ames. He did some videos called Full Fantastic, and I mean that was his name, Full Fantastic. And he did some series called Marvelous Movies. He wanted to be a content creator. He loved the content and all of that. He was hired, but then he started to come out. He came out as being gay, and that was understandably putting some stress on his life, and so on and so forth. But when he talked to Rob, the knob, about some of these things, he was just so cold about it. He was so cold and just absolutely apathetic. He had a meeting with the knob and Bargov, and they both consistently belittled the experience that he was going through. His whole world's changing, and they're all like, whatever. He was having a traumatic experience. It meant nothing to them whatsoever. They didn't even offer him any sympathy. He was trying to see if he could return to the site because he had worked on his content, wanted to continue to have a place to host it. But they they were probably not going to do it, but he was trying to see what could happen, like anyone could do, because it was still a pretty well-known site at that time. But they didn't even acknowledge that his situation was rough. I mean, he says, so while I don't want to accuse anyone behind Channel Awesome being outright homophobic, they certainly don't care about the well-being of queer people. I guess the word here is indifference opposed to hatred. And that's unacceptable. I mean, you're a business. You're not supposed to be indifferent towards people when it comes to things like that. Then you have Aunt America. And he's talking about how there were certain things that were supposed to happen when Channel Awesome debuted. And he was talking to Mike Machode about this. He was saying that each of the producers would be promoted at the top of the page. And Doug would make a video promoting the producers and a video for that week. But this only barely happened. Doug promoted the people, but he didn't really sound like he wanted to. They were supposed to receive sponsored giveaways, but that didn't happen at all. And they did not get a sponsorship. They just got a free gift card. They were supposed to visit the Channel Awesome studio to meet with Doug and Rob to discuss how to grow in the Channel Awesome community, but that never happened. There's supposed to be custom headers that we're going to put up on the site to display other producers, but that never happened. Instead, they just displayed Nostalgia Critic and a few other popular producers for a little bit, and then just stopped doing it entirely. And Mike Machode said that he would be hands-on with them with the integration of the site, but that never happened. He would respond to his questions and concerns as if he was annoying or not worth his time. He always had his Skype set to unavailable, and he never even really responded until he prodded him multiple times to respond. And apparently, just like anyone would think, you would think that the punishments would be handed down the most harshly for the rookies, for the new people on the site. But nope, that's not what happened. Instead, on multiple occasions, Greg doled out the harshest punishments on veteran producers, and who in every case had never done or never once stepped out of line. Chaos D1 faced the harshest penalty, being removed from the site for being 1 day late with his second upload for the month. Understandably, he left after that because it's a bunch of bullshit. Although he'd been in the site for years and had never been late. Tom White experienced the same treatment. And exactly like D1, he was told it was his one strike, and if he did it again, he would be permanently removed from the site. Apparently, Aunt America witnessed this all play out in real time. I like his quote here. It says, "I cannot fathom how such treatment is justifiable, or to any extent, even intelligent. Where is the value of demoralizing the producers most loyal to your brand with the most impeccable track records of reliability? What sort of people would do blatantly disrespect and demean those who they should ostensibly value? The knob and the chode, that's who run channel Abomination." And apparently he was talking about how they only care about Doug. Well, of course, because Doug is their wheelbarrow, is their wheel. You know, Doug is the guy who brings in the money. He was mentioning that you could do all these different changes to the site and change things up and enable people who visit the site to see other people's content easier. And Machode and the knob, the chode and the knob are being like, oh, that's too hard to do. And he's all like, no, it's not. It's easy. He showed an example of how you can do it, and all they did is just delete that option altogether from the site. Then you have Tom White, and this is really awful, because this is where he's I'm trying to remember. There's a Skype call that he did. He was on a Skype call with Machode when he was explaining how to use that guy with the glasses system, when he casually mentioned that Dodd was going to be let go, and this is Mike Birdman Dodd, who was mentioned earlier, and Mike apparently had to learn the news from White, from Tom, because he was never told the news by Chode and company. And there was this video game music contest that happened. There was a winner in Russia. And apparently, Chode's such a cheap ass. He was thinking that, the prize should be an old Sega Genesis is lying around. And Tom White was going to offer his own prize, but Chode was like, no, let's give him this shitty Sega Genesis. And they never even sent the prize out to the person who won. They didn't even send him a gift card. They sent him nothing. And I'm just checking some things here. Flipping through. Yeah, he was. Tom White was trying to get videos out when you had under all this pressure and so on and so forth, and he managed to get his second video out, I think only like a day late, and then he was messaged by Greg and then basically told him that it's over. And apparently he had been with the guys for 6 years, and that's when you have the whole, I understand that, but rules are rules with this. No one is getting special treatment for this because it would be unfair. Now, if you'd like to get back on the site, you need to have 2 videos ready before we add you back. When you have 2 videos ready, message me, and I'll go ahead and add you back on. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And then he's like, okay, if this is your one and only strike. But really, it's like, he'd been there for 6 years. He was a day late. He gave them a mention. I mean, he put out his 2nd of October video, and he's only a day late on his December video. And they're not even consistent with this policy, because there's other people who haven't uploaded in months that were still on the site. But nope, we'll give you a strike. And apparently this is the last straw for Tom White, and I don't blame him. I would have left too if I was in that situation. So he didn't want to sit around and wait for the next time that he made some minor mistake and get kicked off. And he couldn't support them after seeing how they treated so many of the producers, employees, and fans. So he left and never looked back. And the last person that is interviewed here, actually there's one more person, but the last one that has a name is Lindsay Ellis, a Nostalgia Chick. And she talks about how when she left years ago and the mismanagement of Channel Awesome, it doesn't really haunt her every waking moment, which is good. She's mentioning she's reiterating the whole ridiculousness of the fact they didn't have food or water on the set of the anniversary film. And apparently she tried to give advice or make suggestions about the film, but she was met with disdain for it, which is really lame. And there was a sexual harassment case, which is really fucked up. And Machode expected producers who were independent contractors to hand over their privately written and filmed crossover videos during anniversaries to help recoup the costs of production, while themselves getting no compensation was repugnant and exploitative. And she says, I regret not having pushed back more against this. And she also says, during this time, there was also a streak of harassment against female contributors. The worst case involved me resulted in an extended case with the NYPD. This was not the only incidence of harassment that went unremarked upon by Channel Awesome. There was a rash of harassment against CA producers between 2013 and 2014, mostly women, which was never acknowledged or condemned by Channel Awesome. Which is really terrible. And apparently she had a breaking point when there was this guy named Dan Olson, who she recommended to be brought on to the site. He got caught up in this conspiracy theory. There's some conspiracy theorists who were really railing on him and doxed him, accused him of being a child pornographer, machoed, and called her up when she was driving home to visit her family in Tennessee. It was mad at her because she's the one that recommended this guy, and apparently this was not the first time that one or several of the producers are being targeted by harassment campaigns. Channel Awesome producers never stood up for anyone unless it was directly related to them being demonetized with What's the Fair Use. They stayed silent while many of their female contributors over the years were targeted during the Gamergate thing. Their business model implies it is more important to be for them to be uncontroversial than it is for them to stand behind their contributors who are being targeted. And a few days later, she left. Now, the last one is the most disturbing instance here in this entire document. And this one really upsets me. This pisses me off that they would allow this shit to go on. And whoever it is that did this, I hope they get what's coming to them. And I hope they get it soon. So this is a story from an anonymous contributor they're calling Jane Doe, who is recounting the story of a former producer on the channel and on the site who had sexually abused her, and claims that management was aware of this producer's deviancy for a year and did absolutely nothing. Now, pieces of information, including names, they have been changed for the sake of privacy or completely removed. And this chat is copied with the victim's permission. So Jane Doe is here. She says, "Hi, I'm one of his victims. I have nothing but hate for him. So do I. It makes me mad. Mad at all of you. Even though I know you don't deserve it. It's why I left. Yeah, he groomed me." There's Anonymous is talking to her. I think at first we need to come to terms with the fact that a lot of people in this legit chat did not know. That's something I need to come to terms with. I burned so many bridges because I was so angry. So I'll tell my facts. I want to leave out anyone else who doesn't need this shit. So this is her words here. "I don't know. I'm sure I'm part of it. I could have been louder. I'm no angel." Because the whole thing, folks knew about this and had a chance to cut off his access to fans early, but apparently did not. But she's like, "I don't know. I'm sure a part of it. I could have been louder, but I'm no angel. Anyway, you all knew me back then. Physically, I was 18, but I had the mind of a 16-year-old at best. He groomed me. Convinced me to take off my clothes for him. Told me he wanted to teach me how to kiss, fuck, etc. Made it seem like it was teaching someone how to read. Anyway, I genuinely thought he was being an impassionate teacher. I came forward as best as I can. Yeah, it wasn't until I read a pamphlet on child grooming techniques I went, holy shit, that was me. Yeah, that's the damning part. Since he didn't hurt me, I wonder how much of it was him genuinely thinking he was helping me come into my sexuality. But I'm really done with all of this. I'm a different person in a different world, and I can't really dredge it all back to remain mentally healthy. This is about as brave as I can get. I was so mad at all of you. I'm glad that some of my anger was misplaced. I'm sorry I burned so many bridges. I was just so angry. Yeah, part of the reason I couldn't say so much is because grooming isn't illegal. And I can't say you raped me, so there wasn't anything to tell. Yeah, seriously, like I said, when I read the pamphlet on child predator techniques, I was like, what? OMG, that was him and me. So yeah, that's really fucking bad. I cannot believe that shit. And the fact that, it's a year. A year went on and they did nothing. They let this guy continue to work for the company and to do this shit. If that isn't enough of a condemnation, if that isn't enough proof for you to drop this fucking site and this channel like a bad habit, I don't know what is. It's not only an incompetent site and channel led by a bunch of incompetent chodes and knobs and assholes and dumbasses, they turned a blind eye to absolutely abhorrent behavior. Not only to their own, not only to producers and other people like that, fans, so on and so forth, continue to employ people who either don't know what they're doing or were harassing other people. I know this is almost 2 hours long, but sometimes you just gotta get stuff off your chest and you gotta say what you gotta say, and be however long it's gonna be. And there's a few other things I want to talk about. But yeah, I mean, this is a damning document that I really feel has completely just changed everything. I don't look back at the site anymore as with this viewpoint of, oh, those were the good old days. That was, it was better back then. It was always full of this shit. It was always an abomination. It didn't just become an abomination recently. It was always that way from the beginning. Very early on. It's just now that we're starting to see the cracks. And we're starting to see what's fallen through the cracks. And it's honestly a shame that this stuff didn't come out earlier, so the damage that was done could be lessened. So you wouldn't have as much damage that was done to people who contributed to the site and to all, anyone else who was associated with Rob Walker and Mike Machad. I don't even care, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name properly. He's a fucking chode. Scum chode of the fucking universe. So there is a fan story section where fans are talking about different things that happened. And I'm only mentioning this because there is one bit here that is a potential connection to the sexual harassment case. This is a potential, this is a person who could potentially be the person who was harassing people or not. I don't know for sure, but because these are rumors, they're not substantiated, they're not true yet. They're not confirmed. But I also want to mention this one. This one's pathetic and sad, but it's kind of funny. Apparently, there was a charity live stream where Channel Awesome people that were raising money for the Ronald McDonald House. But that was a fact that they never mentioned during the stream. But apparently, Rob Walker, the knob, was wearing a dinosaur mask. And the entire crew had been assembled there. Angry Joe, Last Angry Geek, Lindsay and Cara Spooney, etc. They had already used Doug's ample supply of liquor at his home bar to get completely plastered and turn the whole event into a bigger drunken train wreck as the night went on. This is basically all this charity event was. The CA people hanging out in Doug's admittedly sweet bar, getting shit-faced, doing little comedy bits, maybe a live review or two, embarrassing themselves, their website, and the charity. None of them could have given less of a shit about. It was perversely entertaining, but the highlight of that night in the microcosm of what was wrong with CA both then and now was a part of during the event where if you donated a certain amount of money, I think $200 or $300, you got to ask Spooney, who was then at the peak of his nerd powers and was still early into his descent into madness, a question over Skype. And someone apparently did. So the caller, who again paid for the privilege to talk to one of his internet heroes, asked a question pertaining to Final Fantasy IX. He says, I can't recall the nature of said question. Could have been about what he thought of the game, or more likely, whether or not he had planned to review it. Instead of giving an answer, Spooney told him, your question annoys me, and I'm going to hang up on you. Which then he did. On a guy who yet again paid not an insignificant amount of money to talk to him. This got awkward Jerry Springer audience-like reaction from the other contributors, especially from Angry Joe, who did his usual obnoxious mugging that had been getting more and more obnoxious the more sheets he added to the wind. And Spoonie was never punished for being a dick biscuit. I love that term, by the way. And for embarrassing the CA brand, nor was, to my knowledge, even reprimanded for his conduct. Perhaps there's now an ex-contributor who was in the room that night, wasn't quite hammered enough, or perhaps the mistreated Spoonie fan himself can recall the real story, but regardless, so began the true death and my respect for Noah Antweiler and for Channel Awesome. They managed to raise at least $60,000 from that dumpster fire of a live stream. I wonder what they did with it. Did they actually give it to the charity? They didn't mention the charity. I mean, for all I know, they could have just pocketed that money. So, yeah, I had to mention that because that's just a ridiculous story. Just nuts. So, yeah. Try to find the one that was talking about that there might have been kind of a connection with this particular piece of shit who apparently was harassing people. And there's just a lot of different... Okay, all right. This is from a guy named John. Now, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but this seems like this could be a viable lead for who was the guy who might have harassed a bunch of different women who... and producers and fans. I don't know if it's I think it's content producers. John says, I was a big fan of Channel Awesome in its heyday. Back when it was a guy with the glasses, I watched many of their videos, participated in the forums. Through Channel Awesome, I also became a fan of the composer and content creator Brent Black. Once again, I just get indigestion. I mean, I really do. It just makes me sick to my stomach when I see stuff like this. So, content creator Brent Black, or Brentalfloss, a frequent contributor to both Doug Walker and Paul Schuler, Pa Duggins, and the latter of which was also his roommate for some time. So he was extremely disturbed to learn that a close friend of his had been sexually groomed by Brent while she was a preteen girl. He encouraged her to chat on cam while nude, and later attempted to arrange an in-person meetup with her. This happened shortly before Brent got his big internet fame break through Channel Awesome, and it's since gnawed at me, both the question of how many more girls might have been abused by Brent since he now has a fandom, and how much CA might have known about his behavior. These recent revelations about CA mismanagement and abuse have been extremely discouraging to me, and as the culture of CA seems to fit perfectly with Brent's participation in it. I think it would be worth poking around and looking for more potential Brent victims. I agree. And I hope if there were people who fell prey to this piece of shit, I hope they're doing well, and I hope they're in a much better place and a better situation right now. And I hope he gets punished for this. And like the ultimate punishment. So, yeah, shit just got serious, didn't it? It got real serious. Anyway, that's it. That's all I really have to say. I mean, I've talked your ear off for almost 2 hours. I hope you found it entertaining at least, or maybe not necessarily entertaining, but at least worth watching. And once again, I got to reiterate this. Reiterate this. There we go. There's the word. If you feel that there is any truth to any of this, if you 100% believe, and I honestly, a lot of this is from people who worked on Channel Awesome, who knew people who worked at Channel Awesome, or that guy with the glasses.com. So, I mean, I'm not questioning the validity of these statements. And it seems like it's quite a few. And if you feel that this is all valid, stop supporting. Stop supporting Channel Awesome. Stop supporting this abuse and this bullshit and hit them where it hurt. Hit the chode and the knob where it hurts the most, in their pockets. They make money off of revenue from ads and from their site. Stop going to the site. Stop participating. Stop subscribing. Stop watching the videos if you feel that all of this is valid. If you have questions, and if you even feel that this is valid and you still want to support the channel because you want to support some of the people who are trying to make ends meet and are just caught up in this shitstorm, that's your call and that's fine. And I have no issue with that. Because it's your decision. But me personally, I'm done. I cut ties with Channel Awesome. I'm completely removing this abomination from my life. And it's a shame. It really is. It's a shame that this is how it is. Because I remember when it was first starting up and I was starting to make videos, and I know a lot of other people felt the same way. One of my dreams was to maybe be on there. Be a content producer. And after hearing all this, I'm glad that didn't happen. Because I would just be used and abused by a knob and a chode. So anyway, thanks for watching this really long video, this really long rant. I haven't done one of these long rants in a long time. If you want to see the Google document for yourself, I'll put it in a link down below. Yeah, fuck the chode and fuck the knob and change the channel. See ya.